The morning sun rose slowly over the magnificent Coleman estate, its golden rays slipping through the grand iron gates and kissing the dewdrops that clung to the manicured gardens, while the world within those high walls seemed silent, untouched by the chaos of the outside city. Richard Coleman, a man of immense fortune and greater pride, stood on the marble balcony of his mansion, sipping black coffee from a crystal cup, staring out into the mist with the same emptiness that had lived in his chest for years. To the world, he was untouchable, successful, cold, precise, a man who had everything yet seemed to have nothing. His empire of businesses stretched across industries, his name was printed on magazines and whispered in corridors of power, but the one thing he never had was a family of his own. He told himself he did not need love or children, that emotions only made men weak, but the silence of his home often betrayed him, especially on mornings like these. Just as he turned to retreat back inside, a sound pierced through the calmness of the estate. It was soft at first, almost a whimper carried on the wind, but then it grew, a helpless cry that demanded attention, the kind of sound no man could ignore. Richard froze, his heart strangely pounding, his instincts stirring in a way foreign to him. Following the sound, he descended the marble steps, his polished shoes clicking against the stone, until his eyes fell upon a small woven basket placed neatly at the grand front door, as if someone had chosen this exact place to abandon a secret. He approached cautiously, his brow furrowed, his breath uneven, and when he leaned down, the sight before him nearly made him stagger. Inside the basket, wrapped in a white blanket adorned with tiny blue stars, lay a baby, barely weeks old, its tiny fists curling and uncurling, its face reddened from crying, its innocence shining against the cruelty of whoever had left it here. Richard had faced ruthless tycoons, hostile takeovers, even betrayals from trusted partners, but never had he felt his hands tremble the way they did as he reached down and lifted the infant into his arms. The baby was warm, fragile, alive, and in that moment something deep within him cracked, something he had buried long ago. "Who would leave you here?" he muttered softly, almost to himself, his powerful voice reduced to a whisper. The sound of hurried footsteps broke his trance. Elena, the quiet maid who had served in his mansion for nearly a decade, appeared at the doorway, her apron dusted with flour from preparing breakfast. The tray she carried slipped from her hands, crashing to the floor, as her wide eyes fixed on the bundle in Richard's arms. "Oh dear Lord," she gasped, rushing forward. She reached for the child instinctively, her hand steady despite her trembling lips, and cradled the baby against her chest with a familiarity that made Richard's sharp eyes narrow. "Do you know this child?" he asked, suspicion edging his tone. Elena avoided his gaze, rocking the baby gently, whispering soothing words that stilled its cries almost instantly, as if the child knew her scent, her voice, her warmth. It must be abandoned, sir," she stammered, though her face betrayed a storm of emotions. Richard stepped closer, his piercing gaze on her, his instincts screaming that she was hiding something. "You recognized this baby the moment you saw it," he pressed, his voice low, demanding. For a fleeting moment, Elena's eyes shimmered with tears, her lips parted as though to confess, but she quickly shook her head. "No, sir, I only pity the poor soul." But Richard was no fool, years of negotiating with liars had sharpened his ability to sense when truths were being concealed. Before he could interrogate her further, the distant roar of a car engine drew his attention. A black sedan sped past the gates, its tinted windows rolled halfway down, and Richard swore he caught the glint of eyes watching, ensuring the basket had been discovered, before the car vanished into the city streets. His chest tightened, his mind racing with questions. Who had left this child at his doorstep? Why here? Why him? And why did Elena, his loyal maid, seem to know more than she admitted? He took the child back into his arms, staring into its innocent eyes, and though confusion clouded his thoughts, an inexplicable sense of protection washed over him. He didn't understand it yet, but deep inside, he knew this baby was no accident. Something greater was at play. And as the baby nestled against his chest, quiet now, breathing softly as if it belonged there, Richard realized his life had just changed forever. To the viewers following this story, you won't believe the twists that await. So stay with us, because what lies ahead will shake Richard's world to its core, and before we dive deeper, make sure you subscribe to our channel so you never miss a story that proves life's greatest surprises often come wrapped in the smallest packages. The night had fallen over the Coleman estate, but Richard could not rest. He sat in his private study, the baby asleep in a small cradle beside him, the firelight flickering across his face as he stared at the flames, lost in thought. The questions gnawed at him. Who was this child? Why did Elena react the way she did? And why did his own heart feel chained to a baby he had only just met? He turned his gaze to the cradle, watching the child's tiny chest rise and fall, and something softened inside him, something he hadn't felt since his mother passed away decades ago, a longing for connection, for family, for something real. A soft knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. Elena entered quietly, carrying a warm bottle of milk. Her eyes fell on the child, then on Richard, and she hesitated as though standing on the edge of a cliff. "Sir," she began softly, I can explain." Richard's jaw tightened. "Then explain," he said firmly, his eyes never leaving hers. She stepped closer, her hands trembling as she placed the bottle down. "This baby is not a stranger," she whispered, her voice breaking. "He belongs to your family, and to mine." Richard shot up from his chair, his heart pounding. "What are you saying, Elena?" Her eyes brimmed with tears. "Years ago, before I came to work for you, I made mistakes that led me into the hands of people I should have never trusted. I fell in love with a man who turned out to be one of your rivals, a man who used me to get close to your empire. When I discovered the truth, I left him, but by then I was already carrying his child. I couldn't raise the baby on my own, not with danger surrounding me, so I gave him up to protect him. But fate has brought him back here, to your doorstep." Richard's mind reeled, trying to piece together her words. "And why here? Why my home?" Elena wiped her tears. "Because the man who fathered him is gone. He was destroyed by his greed, and before his death, he confessed that the child had a right to a better life. That's why they left him here, sir. Not because they trusted me, but because they knew you would protect him." Richard's breath caught. He looked down at the sleeping child, the truth striking him like a storm. This baby wasn't just a lost soul, he was a symbol of redemption, of mistakes past, of second chances. But more than that, Richard saw the fear in Elena's eyes, the pain she had carried in silence all these years, and for the first time, he saw her not as a maid, but as a woman who had sacrificed everything. Slowly, he walked toward her, his voice softer now. "Why didn't you tell me?" She shook her head. "Because I was afraid, sir. Afraid you would cast me out. Afraid that my shame would destroy me. I never thought the child would return, and now, here we are." Richard reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder, his grip firm yet gentle. "Elena, you have served me with loyalty for years. You carried this burden alone, but you don't have to anymore. This child is under my roof now. That means he is under my protection. And so are you." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but they were no longer only of sorrow, they carried hope. In that moment, the walls that separated master and servant began to crumble, and something deeper began to bloom between them. Days turned into weeks, and the baby became the heart of the mansion. Richard, the man who once buried himself in work and fortune, now spent mornings feeding the child, afternoons walking him through the gardens, and nights ensuring he slept peacefully. Elena was always by his side, guiding him, teaching him, their bond deepening with each passing moment. Whispers spread among the staff that the millionaire was changing, that love had softened his edges, and soon, even Richard could no longer deny it. One evening, as the baby giggled in Elena's arms, Richard approached, his heart pounding in a way it never had in boardrooms or ballrooms. "Elena," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you gave me more than loyalty, you gave me family. And now, I don't want to imagine this house, or my life, without you." Elena's eyes widened, her lips parting, as Richard gently took the baby from her arms, holding him close before reaching for her hand. "I thought wealth was everything," he confessed, "but now I see it was only a shadow. You and this child, you are my light. Will you stay, not as my maid, but as the woman who makes this house a home?" Elena's tears returned, but this time they were of pure joy. "Yes, Richard," she whispered, her voice trembling, "yes." And so, in the quiet glow of that night, the millionaire who once lived in emptiness found love, family, and a future he never thought possible, all because of a baby left in a basket and a truth that bound him forever to the woman who had been by his side all along. Dear viewers, stories like these remind us that life's greatest treasures are not found in gold or power, but in the bonds of love and sacrifice. If you want to continue following heart-touching tales that inspire hope and faith in destiny, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, because the next story may just change the way you see life itself.